The birth of the Brawn GP team is one of the most intriguing stories in F1 history. The initially sponsorless underdog, carrying the name of its owner, battling for podiums with F1 stalwarts Ferrari and McLaren. The BGP 001, packed with innovation and loved by fans all over the world, was the most requested for our next video essay. Taken to court over the legality of their car, the season was far from plain sailing for Brawn GP, a team on the verge of extinction that rose like a phoenix from the ashes of Honda to take both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship in its first and only year in Formula One. This video was made possible thanks to the Amalgam Collection, and they've just added some fantastic Brawn GP scale replicas to their store. Get 5% off these Brawn GP models while stocks last when purchasing at amalgamlegends.com using the promo code BRAWN2019. The origins of the Brawn GP team trace back to Tyrrell Racing, who had a string of F1 success in the 70s. Excluded from the 1984 championship by the FIA courts due to technical irregularities, by the 90s, Tyrrell was a spent force with limited funding. In 1998, British American Tobacco purchased the team and ran as BAR. BAR ran with the slogan, "A tradition of excellence," though 0 points in the first season would indicate otherwise. In 2005, BAR did find a tradition to continue from their Tyrrell heritage, ending up in court with the FIA, this time due to underweight cars. At the end of that year, Honda obtained the remaining 55% stake of the team and drafted in Rubens Barrichello to drive alongside Jenson Button. Though we're all still waiting for the release of their debut single. Honda Racing showed promise and Button won the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix, but struggled to break out of the midfield. Enter Ross Brawn, who had reinvigorated Ferrari as its technical director, winning 6 constructors and 5 titles with Michael Schumacher. He focused his efforts on the 2009 regulation changes, but no one could have predicted the 2008 financial crisis, prompting the shock decision from Honda to pull out of Formula One. The team spent winter desperately searching for a buyer, and little over 3 weeks before the first race of the season, Braun led a management buyout of the team and Brawn GP was born. Honda sold the team for just £1 single and contributed a further $92.5 million, which would have otherwise been spent to wind down the company. Ross Brawn and his right-hand man Nick Fry are also reported to have offered private loans to the team, enabling it to get through 2009. This decision from Brawn to put his own money into a struggling midfield team, it clearly demonstrates his confidence in the car that he had been developing. For 2009, Formula One introduced a raft of new regulations to improve on-track action, extending the span of the front wing and pairing it with a higher, thinner rear wing. Despite Honda's withdrawal, it had poured plenty of resource into development programs, one in Japan and one in England. Although the development in England eventually gave birth to the BGP01, crucially, the Japanese engineers came across a development that could recover plenty of downforce. Stretching the new regulations governing diffusers to the limit, they found a loophole where they could use an area around the crash structure to extend the effective size of the diffuser, placing a piece of bodywork within to split them, creating what became known as the double diffuser. Diffusers accelerate the flow under the car, creating an area of extreme low pressure, which ultimately develops downforce. By enlarging the effective volume of the diffuser, that level of acceleration can be increased, generating extra performance from the car's floor. The double diffuser was also a bit of a smokescreen for the rest of the car's innovations, one of which featured at the front. With wider front wings, a number of teams had begun to direct airflow outwards around the front tyres, known as outwash. Here, the airflow is guided away from the rotating front wheels, minimising the area of wake behind the tyre and cutting drag. Braun's outwash solution was arguably the most dramatic, breaking up the front wing end plate to direct air outwards more effectively and minimising any flow separation. The team also had to make a number of changes under the skin late on, after the withdrawal of Honda. Braun was offered both Mercedes and Ferrari engines, and chose the former as it had the most similar architecture to the Honda V8s. Having to rework the suspension components to fit the new mounting points, and needing to meet the new cooling requirements, the team could at last make the most of its new power plant, though not without chopping off a huge chunk of the chassis to shoehorn the Mercedes engine in. Honda had been developing a KERS package for 2009. Using an energy recovery system at the brakes, teams could charge a battery and use that saved energy later on, enjoying an 80 horsepower boost for 6 seconds per lap. However, Braun decided not to complicate the new car with it. That ultimately proved the right call, as it was a difficult concept to get right, especially as the battery had a knock-on effect for weight distribution. After a shakedown at Silverstone on March the 6th, the Brawn BGP 001 joined the rest of the teams in testing at Barcelona. The pace was good straight out of the box, and on day 3 of the test, Button banged in a lap 1 second faster than anybody else. The double diffuser gang of Braun, Williams and Toyota had stolen a march. The double diffuser was easy to justify based on the regulations, even though its intent was to prevent this happening. The regulations stipulated that the floor be impervious, with no way to feed extra airflow from under the car into the diffuser. By capitalising on the transition between the parts of the car sitting on the reference plane and the slightly higher step plane, a hole could be created. The FIA heard an appeal against the double diffuser after the first 4 races, and Brawn GP took an 8-hour grilling. Ferrari's counsel described Ross Brawn as a person of supreme arrogance. Harsh words, considering just a few years prior, Brawn had been influential in Ferrari's success. Brawn hit back, stating, "It was an innovative approach of an existing idea, and Formula One is all about innovative design." Ferrari's counsel even accused the FIA of misunderstanding the issue, arguing, "The position of the FIA is totally baffling. We urge you to save the FIA from itself." And if you fancy some light reading, you can take a look at the 67-page, 7,000-word document released by the FIA at the time. Brawn claims that he made attempts to tackle the loophole, only to be dismissed by his rivals in the technical working group. "We were not achieving the reductions in downforce that we were asked to do, and I was told the numbers I was intimating were scaremongering." Toyota is believed to have hit on the concept thanks to staff movement from Honda, while the then Williams technical director Sam Michael explained that his team hit upon the idea independently. The Williams team was quite shocked during winter testing to find out how few other people had done it. Needless to say, those on the other side of the fence were less convinced by its legality. It wasn't really an engineering decision. It became a political battle where Max Mosley, who was the FIA president at the time, wanted to give McLaren and Ferrari a slap. Any vagueness in the rules allows for interpretations that some might call against the spirit of the regulation. As Paddy Lowe surmises, in all of these things, there's a bit of cleverness and there's a bit of politics. In the first race of the season in Australia, Jenson Button led a 1-2 finish for the squad. A performance not seen from a new team since Wolff won its first World Championship F1 race in 1977. Button went on to win in Malaysia, Bahrain, Spain, Monaco and Turkey. Many point to the double diffuser as the secret to its success. But Toyota and Williams failed to win a race with the same philosophy. Braun switching development to 2009 very early, the innovative outwash front wing and a redesigned back end to accommodate the Mercedes power unit all played a significant role. Red Bull emerged as a formidable challenger to Brawn GP, whose performance dwindled due to a lack of development budget. Despite backing from Virgin and a whole host of one-off sponsors, the team could only afford to build 3 chassis, with Button using just 1 for the entirety of his championship campaign.
Yeah, this was Jenson's car that he drove this car the whole year. We had 3 cars for the whole season, but this is the one that Jenson drove the whole season, won 6 races in it, won the championship in it. And I think, you're talking about looking after the car. The great thing about Jenson and Rubens is they did no damage.
While Barrichello didn't feature in the title fight, and even accused the UK-based team of Button favouritism, he did score 2 victories, taking Braun's season total to 8. The massive points buffer the team built up from the start of the year proved enough to win the Constructors' title and crown Jenson Button as world champion. At the time, Mercedes were keen on owning a controlling interest in a Formula One team, and already had a 40% stake in McLaren. With a full takeover proving difficult, Mercedes saw an opportunity with Brawn GP and purchased a 75% stake. Thus, Brawn GP was no more. In 1 season, the team showed that with the right people, some artistic interpretation of the rules, and just a touch of luck, anything is possible. Although Mercedes finished 4th in the 2010 Constructors' table, when the turbo hybrid regulations arrived in 2014, the team started an era of dominance, winning the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships 5 years in a row to date, thus cementing Honda's move to sell the team as possibly one of the worst decisions in the history of F1. Ross Brawn stayed with Mercedes until 2013 and returned to Formula One in 2017 as Formula One's Group Managing Director of Motorsports. The mastermind behind much of Schumacher's success, who revived a team to title-winning ways, and currently in charge of F1 sporting direction, Ross Brawn much like his BGP 001, is a true legend of racing. If you're wondering where the cars are now, Button very nearly sued Mercedes for not gifting him one of his title-winning chassis, a bonus in his Brawn GP contract. They eventually settled out of court, so the 3 chassis are now split between Button, Braun and Mercedes. And of course, please let us know in the comments what you'd like us to feature next time.